Hello, hello, scientists. Welcome. Good afternoon. It is our science lesson that we are embarking on today. I appreciate those of you who have been waiting and have been so patient as I have been getting us all set up. So while we're trickling in, double check that you have all the materials that you need for today's lesson, a science notebook, a writing utensil, and not just this, you might, if you're feeling confident, we will be going on to FOSS Web today. So really, this is your exit ticket, is going to be doing some work on FOSS Web, and I will further clarify this at the end of the lesson. Until we get to that point, let's go over our ICANNs for today. You can either say them out loud with me or write them down. If you are panicking and trying to get things written down and it's causing you a lot of stress, put the pencil down and just read it out loud with us. And you can always go back later to write down your ICANNs when you're feeling less rushed. So say it with me. I can identify the components of Earth's subsystems, and I can describe the components and subsystems of an ecosystem. Let's remind ourselves that really when we're talking about the different subsystems of Earth, we remember that we have four subsystems in or on Earth. We have our biosphere for life. When I think of bio, I think biology. We have our biosphere. Say that with me. Oop, not bioshear. Biosphere. I love it when I make mistakes because it really helps me make sure that I'm double checking all my spelling. Biosphere. I mean, like a me too if you often misspell things when you're writing them down. We have our biosphere. We have our atmosphere. We have our hydrosphere. And we have our geosphere. Now remember that we did some good, we had some good discussion about what these root words mean, where we've seen them in the past. When I think of bio, I think of biology. I think of, an autobiography is usually talking about someone's life. When I think of like atmosphere, atmospheric, right? The things that have to go deal with air, right? So we have life, we have air, hydrosphere, thinking about times that we've used the word hydro. Consider, are you hydrated? Are you dehydrated? Often refers to how much liquid that you've had. And really, and I'm going to kind of come up a little closer here so that you can see these notes in a bigger space. So we have biosphere, which refers to our life. We have our atmosphere. We have our hydrosphere. Hydro, some of you drink water out of hydro flasks, right? We're hydrosphere. And geo, think of where we've seen the word geo before. Some of us collect geodes, right? They're a type of rock. Some of us really loved our geology unit that we studied in fourth grade. And you give me like a connection if you are, a budding geologist, always looking for rocks or studying the land, the earth, right? Parts like the land part of earth. So really we're reminding ourselves of, the four components, not even components, there are a lot of components within these subsystems, but these are the four subsystems of Earth. Now, of course, there are subsystems within subsystems. We've talked about other examples where we are noticing certain systems. Absolutely. If I have a vacuum machine and the wheels itself that I can use to wheel around, that's its own system. It's a subsystem within the larger system. If we're missing one of those parts, it's just going to be a stationary vacuum. It's not really going to do much if it doesn't have wheels to roll around on. When I think of other systems or subsystems within a larger system, I'm thinking of BART. On its own, the BART car can get people, that is a subsystem within itself. There's chairs, there's doors, there's announcements, there's maps inside, there's handles for people to hold on to. But without that BART car being a part of its larger system, it's not going to go anywhere. It needs the rails, it needs the communication systems to be able to perform its function, right? Its role. If you can think of another example of a system that you've seen out in the world or a subsystem within a larger system, go ahead and throw that into the chat. I can see that there are 12 of you here, and so it is so wonderful that you are joining us live for our meeting. So we've done a quick review. We know what the 4 subsystems of Earth are. We've also taken a moment to, I'm like buffing up my skills here. I'm quite proud of myself, and shout out to Mr. Taco, who, I'm modeling my word wall after him. We're moving on up. We've got this word wall over here. So if at any point in time you need to, recapture, take some notes on our definitions, this is a good place that you can always come back to. That being said, we know that systems are a group of interacting parts that work together to serve a role. BART works together within all of its interconnected parts to serve the purpose of getting people from one place to another. The subsystem that functions within a larger system, absolutely consider how big these are. We need our geosphere. Without the geosphere, it's going to be really difficult for there to be at least human life if there's no land. We can look at other planets, right, and consider these 4 subsystems. This is something that scientists who are studying other planets are considering. Are there any other planets that are hospitable like Earth is? And the way that they're doing that is by looking at these subsystems within the planet. If a planet has water and has land, but no life and the atmosphere is toxic, is that going to work for Earth or for humans to live on? It's likely that it's not. Really, these 4 subsystems allow life to flourish. And so really this is a moment where we're examining things that are real to us. It is very real to consider, oh my gosh, with climate change and all of these other things happening, how is one subsystem interacting with the others? We can't just take one subsystem as a part. So with that, we're realizing that we need to go deeper to understand what is happening with biosphere. How might our biosphere affect these other elements? And so when we think of biosphere, this is Earth's subsystem that includes all living organisms, not just some, but all of them. All lives are important in this biosphere. And so when we're considering biospheres, the system or the subsystem within the biosphere are ecosystems, right? And so what I would like for us to take a glance at is that here I have, okay, there we go. I have drawn a graphic, there we go, of our ecosystems, knowing that ecosystems are made up of 2 more subsystems. What are they? 2 more subsystems that are living and non-living components. If you're like, Mrs. S.J., we went over this in 4th grade. I am so happy that you remembered because ecosystems are so important, right, for us to understand what are the different things that are happening on Earth. So we have living in non-living systems? Well, once again, here we have this question. How do these subsystems interact and influence one another, right? So under living, I've put plants and animals, right? Consider all living things, they are plants and animals. You know, human beings, when it comes down to it, are a type of uh, animal when it comes down to it, right? Non-living, we've got temperature, wind, moisture. You might even, we might even argue that rocks, right? Rocks are not living things, but absolutely, when we're considering non-living, these are physical characteristics of the ecosystem. So these non-living things aren't just here for fun. We always have to ask ourselves, well, what is the purpose? What is the function of non-living things? Well, the function of non-living things is to provide needs for organisms, even the tiniest microorganism, the teensiest, tiniest little thing that you maybe can't even see with your naked eye, rely on these non-living things to create an environment where they can flourish, right? So these provide resources for our living things, okay? They provide resources and needs of living organisms. When we're thinking about this, really we're realizing that there's not just one ecosystem here on Earth, right? There are thousands of different ecosystems on Earth, including, and if you have any ideas of other ecosystems, go ahead and write in the chat. What are some examples of ecosystems that we are familiar with? I'm going to give a little think time for this one. When we started off our year in 4th grade together, all the way last year, it's been a while, but think back. We first started our history and science talking about the different regions within California. Regions are a subsystem. And in fact, these ecosystems exist within the different regions. So the ecosystems are subsystems of regions within different places. Well, you can give me like a me too. I know that you guys are there. I feel like I'm in one of those like silly like young kid things where I'm like asking you to call and respond, but I know that you're here. So give me like a me too if you were thinking, well, one ecosystem I know of is like warm tropical seas. Maybe you've been lucky enough to go to Hawaii or some other Caribbean kind of place, right? We have like cold northern seas. I'm thinking like Greenland or places up in Alaska. I know Quincy's going to be going up and experiencing that very different ecosystem there. We also have places with forests. Many of you know that I like to go up to the cabin, and the cabin has its own specific ecosystem for those forests up in the high altitude area. Now the cabin isn't super high. It's about 4,000 feet above sea level. But if you go way high up, like over 800, 900 feet above sea level, you're going to get into specific ecosystems that are like cold tundra-like spaces where oftentimes people who live in that area call it the tree line because you can see where trees stop growing. It's really fascinating. If I'm missing any other places, go ahead and throw those in the chat. I know there are, like I said, thousands of different ecosystems on our incredible blue planet. So let's let's keep moving. You know, we've had a lot of time to look at our word wall, not just taking note of our word wall, but considering within the biosphere, we know that ecosystems, there are going to be thousands of different ecosystems. Every ecosystem, no matter where it is comprised of these two things, living and non-living. What are they comprised of? That's right, kids. Living and non-living things. Okay. So we've done a bit of review. We've reviewed the 4 subsystems of Earth. We've narrowed it down and taken biosphere, just one of the 4. And we have realized, well, within this subsystem, within the subsystem of biosphere, of life on Earth, we know that no matter where this ecosystem is, it is comprised of 2 things, living and non-living things. Again, we have to ask ourselves about the interaction. How are these systems within these systems interacting and supporting each other? So with this, we've answered this, question again. What is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a system with living and non-living things. Now is where we're going to do some interesting things. So I have pulled up our FOSS web page. Take a minute to think of how can you get here. Well, you absolutely, when either you can do this alongside while I'm doing this video, or you can watch and follow along, and then you'll get on this afterwards. So either one of the 2 things. You'll either watch and follow along and take notes, or do this with me on your own. So what we're going to do is, when you make it to your FOSS webpage, and by this time you know that there are multiple places of how you can get onto the system. You can get onto this system from our virtual classroom by clicking the plant, but you can also get onto this from Clever as well. Once you access this, you want to make sure that you have selected living systems. I'm pretty sure this is the only one that I have available, but we have 2 more units, so if those pop up, just ignore those and pull up living systems. Now remember, you will have to sign on using Clever. Once you arrive on this page, you can give me a thumbs up. If not, you're following along and knowing that you are selecting living systems. Then we are going to go to the digital only resources, right? Because we are learning online at this moment. Once you find this column all the way on the right, you're going to click Card Sorts. Now, you'll notice we have quite a few different systems here. We have Monterey Bay and we have woods. So 2 different types of ecosystems. Remember, there are thousands of different types of ecosystems. Today, we are going to select woods ecosystem card sort. Now, one thing I'm super grateful for, FOSS includes things not just in English, but also in Spanish. Unfortunately, they're still catching up. Of course, there are hundreds of languages out there that aren't represented on this. But, if you are, I recommend that you start this in English. If Spanish is your primary language or a language that you are learning, it might be interesting to try it in English first and then try it in Spanish and see how your knowledge is. Oops. And of course I clicked the one in Spanish. So let's go back because I'm going to do this in my primary language. So here it's going to give us instructions to use the card sort. We're going to drag the cards into this white workspace, and then we're going to need to click on zoom, okay? So I might have to scroll down to find the zoom feature. So once I click on it, then I'm going to read the card that I have selected, and I'm going to read it super closely. After I read it, I'm going to figure out how they're connected. And really I'm thinking, okay, Is this a producer, a consumer, a predator, right? And or is it a non-living thing, right? And then do you see these arrows? So kind of by zoom, we have different arrows. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag these arrows onto the workspace to show the relationship of the different organisms, whether they be living or non-living. So here they've given us an example of a chipmunk who relies and eats pine trees, and for pine trees to thrive, they need earthworms. Now, this is going to be super interesting because we're going to start, and it's likely these are going to go away. So let's click start. And we're going to pull each card just one at a time. Now remember, it's super teensy tiny. We're going to need to press, oop, it looks like it went back by accident. That's okay. No worries. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to drag our card. And when I scroll down, I'm going to press zoom so that I can read this. There we go. So let's read this. And I'm going to always read carefully just because this is going to give so much detail for what we need. And these are a really good first thing to consider is this a non-living or a living organism? Absolutely, a black bear is a living organism. Black bears are mostly nocturnal. They can run 50 kilometers per hour, swim, and climb trees. They live in forests and woodlands. Okay, let's hear what type of food they eat. Black bears are omnivores. This means that they eat fruits, nuts, berries, roots, insects, fish, eggs, carrion, honey, and small mammals. Predators to black bears are humans, brown bears, and wolves. Okay, so I can click anywhere to get out of this. So now I know what the black bear eats. I know what can hunt or is a predator towards the black bear. Let's see how this relates to another organism. Let's take a look at this. So in order for me to look at this, I'm going to click, oop, keeps on backing up. No big deal. We'll just pull these out again. So I might pull a few of these out, okay, and see how are they related to each other. So let's click on the grama grass. How is grama grass a part of this ecosystem? Grama grass can survive long periods of drought if not too heavily grazed. It begins growing early in spring and continues to be green in late fall. Food makes its own food by photosynthesis. Predators. Grazing mammals such as deer, elk, antelope, also birds, rabbits, hares, chipmunks, reptiles, insects, and tortoises. I did not see a black bear mentioned in here. Did you? So this is likely not going to be affected by the black bear. Let's see what else we can look at to see if there's a relationship between the two of them. Okay, here we have, oop, I see what I was doing. Here we go. To pull these out again. So let's look at the grouse. Okay. Males attract females in spring by making a booming call. They roost at night in trees, fly upslope in the morning, and feed in brush and meadows as they walk down. Food: seeds of grasses, berries on low shrubs, and flowers. predators, coyotes, wolves, lynx, foxes. So again, this doesn't look like it is going to be affected by the bear. I might go ahead, it does say grasses, so I'm going to go ahead and say I'm pretty sure that grouse would eat the grama grass. So I'm going to click on the arrow that I want to use. Oop, this arrow. Oh, I just pull and drag. So excellent. And then, you know, I'm going to keep this one over here because absolutely within the same ecosystem, we might have organisms coexisting. Let's take a look at bacteria. Bacteria live in all natural environments and decompose dead organisms. Oops, let's go back. Food. It breaks down and consumes dead matter and waste. Predators, other bacteria, other microorganisms. So for now, I'm just going to leave this one off to the side. Now, what your goal is to see how many of these you can really try and find a connection. Well, I know that black bears eat small mammals. So I might have the black bear here. Oh, I have to drag it. That's right. And you know what? Maybe I don't want to do, I want to drag with this sign. So we'll go here. And the arrows are signifying what organisms rely on, or what other organisms a living organism relies on for nutrients, for, you know, to thrive and to continue growing in this specific environment. So really, as we're winding down together, I really would like for you to get onto FOSSWeb and play around with this. Read these different cards and try your best to see which of these organisms are coexisting, what organisms get eaten by other organisms, and do all living organisms need other living organisms to survive? Excuse me. So on that note, we are going to end our time for today. I will see if you get logged on to FOSSWeb. So either go to FOSSWeb through your Google virtual classroom, or through Clever. If you access it through Clever, it will for sure notify me. I am going to say spend at least 20 minutes with these cards to try and organize them within this ecosystem. Okay, remember, you are doing the woods ecosystem, not Monterey Bay. All right, if you are